The movie kicks off with the city showing signs of a major disturbance. Under the water, a monster slowly emerges, triggering the government's emergency alarms, urging people to evacuate quickly. The massive monster, 60 meters tall, has emerged from the depths. Wherever it goes, houses, cars, and streets are destroyed. Planes swiftly arrive, surrounding the monster and preparing to fire. They fire missiles at the monster, injuring it and immobilizing it. In Yokohama, the primary monster defense team is Team 3. They jump out of the helicopter, landing with their guns ready. Each shot they fire makes the monster's blood spurt out. The 4 of them charge through the smoke, approaching their target with professional precision. Finally, they finish it off with a direct cannon shot through its belly. The massive body explodes, sending parts and blood flying across the area. The debris and blood splatter everywhere. After the defense team's attack, Team 5 arrives to clean up the remains. Surveying the monster's remains, it is clear they will have to work overtime. After killing the monster, the members of Team 3 receive warm applause from the people. Once more, they win without any casualties. Kafka, our main character, is on his way to the designated cleanup site. The silent work of the cleanup crew begins after the battle ends. Their job is to deal with the gruesome remains. They have to dissect the monster, preserving important parts as samples and destroying the rest. Seeing the crane lifting a large piece of the monster's fat, Kafka quickly shouted, "Don't lift that up here!" But it was too late. The piece exploded in midair. The acidic blood splattered everywhere, causing serious burns upon contact. Luckily, it was just a surface wound, so Kafka quickly applied antiseptic on his co-worker. Kafka had experienced this many times before. The battlefield after Team 3's battle was so chaotic that distinguishing the different organs was difficult. Given the monster's size, they wondered if a week would be enough to complete the cleanup. Suddenly, Kafka was asked to assist with the intestines because they were short-staffed. His face turned pale. He wanted to run away, but his boss insisted he handle it. There was no choice because working with the intestines was extremely tough, dealing with the worst and smelliest waste. On days they cleaned the intestines, it was impossible to eat. Kafka pulled out the chainsaw and made an incision, the stench lingering throughout the night. Even when he got home, he still felt nauseated. On TV, a special report praised Team 3's achievements under Captain Mina's leadership. Even though she was only 27, she had already killed hundreds of monsters. Kafka remembered his childhood, when he and Mina had promised to wipe out the monsters. Now, one of them was the nation's most beloved captain, a top candidate for division leader. The other one, Kafka, was a cleanup worker, living in a cramped, filthy room and eating cheap meals. That special report left Kafka with a headache that lasted until the next morning. Today at work, a new member named Ichikawa joined the team. Ichikawa is aiming to join the defense force, according to a co-worker. Kafka had the same goal in the past, but now he is a cleanup worker. Ichikawa asked seriously why Kafka gave up. Kafka paused for a moment, then replied cheerfully, "There's always someone better, and my talents are limited." Ichikawa declared that he would never give up, no matter what. Is giving up really that terrible? The team leader was assigning different parts of the monster for everyone to handle. The new member had to handle the intestines, and unfortunately, so did Kafka. Co-workers often noted that while Kafka grumbled, he always took charge. If he had passed the test, he would have been an exemplary defender. After the last task, both Ichikawa and Kafka were utterly exhausted. Ichikawa had brought a lunchbox, but couldn't eat the food. Kafka tossed him a milk carton to have something in his stomach for the afternoon. He also handed him 2 nose clips, insisting he use them despite any resistance. That afternoon, they and their co-workers continued working together. After finishing the worst parts, only Kafka and Ichikawa remained. Ichikawa approached him, making Kafka think he was about to retaliate. But Ichikawa just wanted to thank him for helping him get through his first day. Then, blushing with embarrassment, he turned away. Ichikawa wanted to tell Kafka that the Defense Force had raised the recruitment age limit to 33 due to declining birth rates. When Kafka mentioned giving up, he appeared deeply sad. Ichikawa simply mentioned it, leaving the decision up to Kafka. Kafka thanked Ichikawa, surprised at his kindness. At that moment, a massive monster emerged from the ground, nearly grabbing Ichikawa. Thankfully, Kafka quickly pushed him out of the way. The monster reached for Ichikawa again, but Kafka managed to push him aside and urged him to run for help. "Go, you need to become a defender. You can't die here, so listen to me." Immediately after, Kafka shouted to distract the monster, making it focus on him. He ran as fast as he could, with the giant spider monster chasing him. Kafka kept running and barely managed to slip into a building where the monster couldn't follow. Its hand almost touched his back, but he couldn't stop yet. Kafka dashed toward the glass door at the back of the building. Memories of elementary school flooded back. Mina was most desperate, and Kafka showed up. The entire neighborhood, including their school, had been destroyed. Kafka was angry at the monsters, only because they prevented him from finishing his favorite video game. Kafka's face was lively, while Mina was sad about her cat's death. They sat on a hill, looking at the city in ruins, caused by the monsters. By a strange coincidence, both of them declared their determination to join the defense force at the same time. Thus, a 6th grader and a 1st grader made a pact to see who would become the mightiest defender. However, reality was harsh, and now Kafka was running for his life from a giant monster. Unable to run any longer, Kafka decided to stand and fight. He remembered the vital advice to aim for the opponent's legs. But his hands were shaking, and the monster struck him, sending him flying and crashing violently. A massive hand pinned Kafka down, making him scream in pain. His leg was seriously injured, making it impossible to stand. His head was spinning. All he could do was sit there, waiting for the monster to open its enormous mouth and devour him. Blood sprayed everywhere, but it wasn't Kafka's, it was the monster's. Ichikawa quickly returned to help Kafka after reporting the situation. If he had abandoned Kafka and run away, he knew he would never become a true defender. This reminded Kafka of the letter that told him he had failed the Defense Force exam. His chest wound was excruciating, and his leg was bleeding continuously. This was the moment he felt most powerless. He couldn't protect his video game, his friend's cat, and now he couldn't protect Ichikawa. The monster swung its arm to crush them both, but a tiger suddenly appeared and bit its hand. Then, the monster was blown to pieces, turning into hundreds of chunks of flesh. It was Mina's battle tiger. As soon as the target was down, she and her team moved quickly to check for any additional monsters. Kafka was taken to the hospital by his teammates for treatment. That night, lying in the hospital bed, he thought about how amazing Mina was, taking down such a terrifying creature in an instant, far beyond his capabilities. Ichikawa, lying in the bed next to him, commented that he looked very heroic. "If you hadn't saved me today, I would definitely have died. So you truly deserve to be a defender." Kafka remembered the competition between him and Mina about who would become the mightiest defender. Thanks to this 18-year-old, all his old motivations came rushing back. Just as his desire to become a defender grew stronger than ever, Kafka noticed a small monster in front of him. It emitted a strange wave and said it had found him. Before Kafka could scream, it had already slipped into his mouth and down his throat. A brutal transformation began, making Ichikawa think Kafka was still hurting from his wounds. But something felt terribly wrong. Ichikawa quickly pulled back the curtain, and what he saw was shocking. Kafka had completely transformed into a monster with a skeletal face and a pitch-black body. An elderly man outside the door saw it and quickly called the Defense Force emergency hotline. The scene shifted to approximately 25 years ago. The most important lesson Kafka taught Mina was to always aim for the monster's legs first. The girl sighed and wondered if he was afraid of fighting monsters thousands of times bigger than himself. Kafka patted her head and reassured her, "Don't worry, I'll definitely be by your side." Back in the present, it turned out that memory was a flashback of Mina's. She could only call Kafka a liar. Suddenly, she received information about a monster appearing at the hospital. Mina, along with her tiger, prepared to eliminate it.